Welcome back, everybody. It's the last day of a really fun week that we've had. It's been Nonprofit Power Week with our friends over at Your Part-Time Controller. Hey, Andrew Miller, you're batting cleanup. It's Friday. Are you
That's
ready?
right. End of the week. We're here to bring it home.
Bring it home, baby. Get them on, get them over, get them in. You can tell I love baseball. But this has really been a fabulous week of content all around nonprofit finance and accounting and bookkeeping and all the things that we need to be doing in the nonprofit sector. But we're going to have this like heart to heart conversation with Andrew Miller today about it might be time to change your accounting partner. It's kind of like breaking up, right? And so, but how do we know when to do it, if we should do it? And Andrew's going to help us really understand some of the nuances behind this. We have amazing partners and amazing content. We only do Nonprofit Power Week a couple times a year. It's very special for us. And so we have our partners to thank about this opportunity. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Third Sector Company, Your Part-Time Controller, again, where Andrew comes to us from, and Martis, our newest partner on the Nonprofit Show. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. Been super excited and honored to be meeting with so many different people from YPTC this week. And we're finishing up with Andrew Miller. Andrew is a director, your part-time controller. Talk to us about where you are and what area you cover.
Thanks so much, Julia. Yeah, so I'm from Houston, Texas. So our Houston market, our Houston office covers our Houston and Central Texas part. I know you had Barbara on earlier this week from our Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Andrew, we got a serious thing to talk about. It's like, should we break up with our partners? How do we know? Is it time for a change? And one of the questions that you're saying that we need to look at is that the partner that you have focuses on the tasks of finance and accounting and not the decisions. I'm thinking also strategy. Is that fair to say that we should be thinking about this?
Yes, definitely, Julia. So, I want to start by just saying that changing your accounting partner can feel really risky. But I
Yeah.
want everybody to think, I want all the listeners to think about what's the cost of not changing accounting partners when you're not getting what you need. And so we're thinking about when accounting partners are focused on tasks and not decisions. So I'm going to shout out to all my finance folks in the audience that we've all heard the term timely and accurate financial reports, and that's a great starting point, but it's not the finish line. A
Okay.
accounting partner should really be explaining what the numbers mean. They should be helping you identify trends and helping leaders make decisions about things like programs, grants, and sustainability.
Interesting, because I think a lot of us don't understand that we can get that depth of knowledge and strategic thinking, that we're more focused in on, is the paperwork done? Did
Yeah.
we reconcile? I mean, I kind of feel like we're leading that argument ourselves in some way and maybe not understanding what the finance team can deliver back to us. Is that fair?
Yeah, definitely. So, whenever we think about this, we know that the accounting records need to be accurate, and we know that the transactions need to all be in, and that we close the books. But when we're thinking about what a true CFO does and a true accounting partner does, we want to be leaning more into the strategy focus and how they're helping us to make decisions. A good way to say this is nonprofit leaders, they don't just need numbers, they need someone who can translate those numbers into action.
Right. Okay. Now I'm not going to throw our older CFO, and finance leaders under the bus, but I'm kind of throwing them under the bus because I know I've talked to your leadership, some of my other partners about this wave of older finance folks, CPAs retiring at a huge rate, and we don't have enough, young trained people replacing them. But I'm wondering if you see a difference between how these younger folks are educated or how they participate, maybe using technology in a different way. Is it fair to say that the younger, newer folks coming in are going to be more strategic and the older folks leaving are not? Or should not that not be part of the conversation?
I don't know that I want to get in trouble and latch on to what you just said, but maybe.
Throw it back on me. That's okay. Throw it back on me.
I do think that there is obviously we yeah, I know you talked earlier with Christine the other day about AI and advancements in technology, and I do think that is a key instrumental part of moving forward. I think younger folks are definitely more in tune with how they can utilize technology to really help create efficiencies, which means that they can focus more at the top of the pyramid, more of the CFO level areas of the organization, and then they're able to use things like generative AI to drop in a set of financial reports and help them come up with key takeaways and maybe decisions that need to be made. So I think that's definitely a key instrumental part. But and I definitely see that with outgoing longtime CFOs, I see nonprofits scrambling to they've been keeping the books for 15 or 20 years and they're not sure what to do. So YPTC has definitely been a resource for a lot of those organizations.
Yeah, I've got to believe that you're getting uh, new business inquiries and just in general, your folks, the folks that you work with are experiencing this, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but man, every day when I go on LinkedIn, I'm just shocked by the number of people that are, this is my last month, I mean, from the financial sector, that they're retiring out. And it's, it's got to be a tough thing for everybody, right? So I kind of feel like that's part of this discussion. It's not just about breaking up with who you have, but it's that you might be you're being forced. They're breaking up with you, right? Because they're retiring or cutting back. So interesting piece of this. Talk to us about this notion that maybe your financial partner, accounting partner, somebody that you're contracting with is operating outside of your organization. What does that mean? Because I don't think I understand that.
So I want to take a minute to say that here at YPTC, a lot of our client service staff, they're working remotely, and so I think an accounting provider can technically be external without feeling disconnected from the organization, and that's really what I'm driving at here.
Okay.
So thinking about some warning signs that it could include, and this could be an internal CFO too, working in isolation. Maybe there's unclear responsibilities or duplicate effort. Maybe there's program staff doing things that are in the finance function and they're duplicating efforts. Also look for information gaps or just program staff or development staff not receiving the reports that they need. So an ideal partner is working as an extension of the team. They understand the operations, they're communicating consistently, and they really help align people, systems, and workflows together.
Yeah, really interesting. I think that you said something very interesting, and that is this aspect of people kind of doing the same work to get the same information. I'm wondering if you see that with folks that might have a grant administrator, or even your fundraising and development, because there are now more reports that are needed. Are you seeing that crossover or bleeding those functions as well?
I think it's highly important that an accounting partner or a CFO is working directly with those staff. They need to be meeting regularly, sharing information, sharing insights that they're seeing. And I think at the core of it here, a great way to rephrase this is outsourced shouldn't mean out of touch.
Mm, yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, it seems to me, Andrew, that as we have more reporting requirements from our funders, certainly if you're dealing with any government contracts, um, everybody feels like they're being pinched for more data and more reporting, and not just like at the end of a contract or post contract, like, ongoing. It's got to put even more pressure on the financial team.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that one of the things that can really help here is we talked already about technology and streamlining these processes. So how quickly can we get these reports pulled together and still ensure that our team is finding opportunities to connect and talk about strategy as well. I think about with this one that there was a client that I worked with, and they wanted me on site one day per week, and it was an hour and a half drive. I'll be honest, it was across Houston, so it was a long drive. Houston's an hour from Houston, if you didn't know. And so I was starting to worry about, okay, well, am I getting the most out of my visits here? And one time I was sitting in a cubicle and I overheard this conversation in the next cubicle over, talking about a special event that was coming up and talking about the need for taking in at the check-in table, taking in cash and other things. And that was a clue to me. I needed to interject myself into this conversation. So I did. We talked about best practices around cash handling procedures. We talked about the operations that needed to happen at the check-in table. And I was able to help steer them in the right direction, whereas they didn't quite have the greatest internal controls built into that process. So it just made me remember, helped me remember why I go on site and why I want to be part of these finance teams and in these discussions.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was talking earlier in the week, actually with my producer, Kevin Pace, and I was recounting about how over the years I have observed how fearful folks on teams are to ask the finance department people anything. They don't want to appear to be dumb. They feel nervous that they're not going to understand what the responses are, and it can be pretty basic stuff. But it's an interesting aspect about these silos that just keep getting perpetuated because people are fearful and won't engage, right? And I think you have to be open to being engaged, right, from the finance team's part. And if you've got a team that's somehow put up mental, visual, or physical roadblocks, like "don't ask me anything" type of thing, which we've all seen. We've all seen this in play. It's an interesting thing about how you operate and how you welcome dialogue, and engagement. Let's talk about this other aspect, because all accountants and accounting functions are not the same. And so, if you've got a provider that doesn't specialize in nonprofits or even within your specific sector, that could be a problem, can't it?
It can. And so whenever we're talking about this, we're thinking about, of course, general accounting experience is definitely needed for
Yeah.
any CFO level or accounting partner. But that's not always necessarily enough. Nonprofits, as you and I both know, Julia, they face distinct requirements around grant reporting and donor restrictions and functional expenses. Oh my, I feel like I had to say that at the end of that.
You did have to say that. That is fabulous.
And then there's, things like audit and compliance that need to happen as well. And honestly, even nonprofit experience can be too broad. So now we're looking at different types of sectors of nonprofits. You've got associations and foundations and education organizations, arts. I mean, there's all these different subsectors of nonprofit organizations, and they're all going to have their own nuanced needs and systems that they're using and reporting realities. So really, the right partner should understand the nonprofit accounting and the specific subsector that you're in.
Mhm. Andrew, I think a big part of that is even the vocabulary, that there are certain words that people use within their organization. I was touring a shelter earlier in the week in my own community, and I used the phrase veteran. And I was thinking and I was talking about leadership. And I said, oh, well, veteran leadership, da 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 da. And this shelter dealt with veterans, like military veterans. And so for a good 15 minutes afterwards, somebody said, you know what, Ms. Patrick, I think I heard you say veteran. And I went right to the military veterans that we serve, because they're a certain class of client. And I was like, what? And then I was like, I was talking about the experiential level of, I didn't want to say older leaders. I chose the word veteran leader. Well, we had lost a chunk of time because we were both using different vernacular and our brains were in a different part. And it was fascinating too. It was such a good lesson about how different we think we're all the same because we're in this sector, but it's very different.
Yeah, we got to choose our words carefully and we got to know the acronyms. Nonprofits, we love our acronyms, so that can get confusing over time. And I know you were talking to Deanna earlier this week, who leads our specializations department at YPTC, and they have resources and tools and webinars and case studies all built around all these different subsectors. And it's a great resource both internally to our YPTC staff. Maybe they get on an association organization client that they've never served with an organization before, and so they can get quick tools and tips as they go into this and understand the vocabulary, like you said. And it can also be, we also have a lot of resources externally to these organizations specific to their needs and strategies.
Mm-hmm. I love that because I think um, that saves a lot of time and money, because
Mhm.
somehow those things are going to have to be uncovered. But if you're just dinging around with trying to get some basic, you know, vocabulary and processes, you're wasting time. You're absolutely wasting everybody's time, right? So, get those tools up front. I love that you brought that up. That kind of dovetails into this one of our last things, and that is a lack of support as your organization grows. And I would even say growth comes in different forms, right? It's not just the financial size of your organization, but are you leaning into technology more? Are you doing things differently? Are you streamlining? Growth comes in a lot of different forms and fashion. How should we be looking at this lack of support? How do we know, I guess maybe is the question, when we're not getting that support?
You made a great point there, Julia. So growth isn't just about larger budgets, right?
Right.
That's what we think about when we think about growth.
I
But
do.
what happens with nonprofits is there's an added layer, in really any business, there's an added layer of complexity. So in nonprofits, this shows up as maybe there's additional complex grants or government grants, reimbursement contracts. Maybe they're growing and they're going to add new programs. We think about specific things to nonprofits. Maybe there's a cost allocation that needs to be implemented. So a partner who can handle basic month-end close may not really be the same one that can help you scale and help you with these complex matters
Yeah.
that a true growing nonprofit really needs.
Yeah. Andrew, that almost seems like going back to your very first point, finding somebody that can be a strategic thinker and strategic leader as opposed just to doing the tasks.
That's absolutely correct. And it's one of the reasons why now at YPTC, we're really training our staff on the CFO mindset, because as we gain efficiencies with technology and streamlining processes and implementing system, connections, as we gain these efficiencies, we're really focused on those higher level CFO type decisions and recommendations for the organizations that we serve. And that's how we're going to move the lever on growth and overall direction for the nonprofits that we work with. And so the accounting model that got you here, maybe as an organization, might not be the same model. It probably isn't going to be the same model that gets you to the next stage and where you want to go.
Yeah, that's a really interesting comment, because when we think about, well, I'm going to speak for myself. when I think about accounting, the basic principles, the basic process has not changed. I mean, it's pretty consistent, but yet what's changing is all this technology and this the ecosystem with how we report and we express and we narrate the numbers, right? But the basic concepts of, liabilities and assets, and wouldn't you argue it hasn't changed, right?
That's
It,
right. Yeah,
it's
it hasn't.
outside pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it hasn't. The foundation hasn't changed, but how we get to the end result has changed, and it creates more room for us to focus on strategy even more as a finance department.
Right. Very interesting. Well, you, like I said, you're the cleanup batter for Nonprofit Power Week. We've had each day has been so interesting, um, and in a standalone conversation every day. But as I reflect on 5 days of content and continual dialogue with your teams, there has been a tremendous amount of information that's woven across all these conversations. I know you've been watching these episodes. What are your thoughts as we wrap up?
I think there's been a lot of great discussions over this past week with my colleagues, and I think technology is definitely an area that is of high focus right now, of course. And really, to wrap up my topic, I think the things you look for when you're considering maybe changing an accounting partner is number one, don't make an impulsive decision. Look for a pattern that shows that they're not meeting the needs of your organization. Also, transition doesn't really need to be disruptive. So it can be structured, collaborative, and well documented. And really, the right accounting partner does more than just keep the books. They help nonprofit leaders understand the story behind the numbers and help you make strategic decisions with confidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that you added that word confidence, because I think that's what funders are looking and donors are looking for. They're looking for that person that's like, yeah, I'm going to fund you and I'm going to march alongside of you because I believe you're going to get this done. I believe you're going to solve this problem or, provide this service. I love that you said that. I think that's brilliant. That's a great way, Andrew, to lead and even just think about your organization.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Really cool. Well, Andrew Miller, the lone cowboy from years past, you might be seeing him again in another Halloween incantation. Andrew Miller, he's a director with our friends over at Your Part-Time Controller, based in Texas, doing amazing work throughout the nation. YPTC has been a part of our family here on the Nonprofit Show since day one, and that's really something that we are super proud of here on the Nonprofit Show. You can learn more about Andrew, his team members, the different things that they do, the way they are leading into this CFO mindset across the organization, serving the entire nation, with helping nonprofits to do better and be better. It's super exciting time to be engaging with these types of conversations and really understanding how the finance part is essential to how we serve. And so, Andrew, thank you for being a part of this. We've had amazing conversations this week. We've talked about the red flags that boards can miss. We've talked about adopting AI that you can trust, not just having a immediate response to a question, but okay, it's like, okay, what's the veracity of this? Again, Andrew talked about breaking up with your accounting partner. What should we be thinking about? How does this look? And then the questions that every leader should be asking their finance team. This was very interesting because I think it dovetails to a lot of what Andrew had to say about what's the thought process here, people. What do we need to be exploring? Not just do we have enough money in the account, but what is going on and what's the future look like? And then the 5 questions you need to ask about software before you buy it, before you make a change. Very interesting. I'll tease the concept here is that sometimes it's the problem of the user and not the software, that we are not trained up enough to knowing to know what the software can do for us. And so we just throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, screw it, let's start over. And so we need, again, a reframe. Each episode's been really great. You can find it on our archives. Uh, Thank you so much, Andrew, for being one of these leaders this week.
Thank you for having me, Julia. And I can't wait to be back on next time.
Yeah, with us as well. Hey, again, we have amazing partners that allow us to have these conversations. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Third Sector Company, Your Part-Time Controller, and Martis, our newest sponsor here on the Nonprofit Show. As we end each and every episode, we leave with this message. And it's really important now more than ever, especially when we're talking about finance and numbers and money. And those are things that stress us out. And the message is this: to stay well so you can do well. We'll see you again.